This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
U.S. President George Bush said that victory in Iraq is a must and that the increase in U.S. forces there contributed to opening the door for a strategic victory over what he described as terrorism. Bush's comments came in a distributed outline of a speech that he will be making today in the Pentagon on the 5th anniversary of the start of the war in Iraq.
This comes as many American cities are preparing to hold demonstrations protesting the war on Iraq on its 5th anniversary.
"5 years minus a few hours have passed since the invasion of Iraq, which completely changed the country. The coalition to go to war, which was hurriedly pulled together, has broken apart. But George Bush alone has not changed." The man stood up 2 months after the start of the war to announce his famous conclusion that the mission had been accomplished and his forces were victorious. Today, on the 5th anniversary of the invasion, he confirms that the performance of his forces, after increasing their numbers, have opened the door to what he called a strategic victory in the war on terrorism. Bush acknowledged the high cost of this war. He said that removing Saddam Hussein was the right thing to do and that victory in this war is a must. Bush recounts what he describes as security achievements made by his forces. However, Iraq, which Bush is paying attention to in his last speech as president on this anniversary, is a place of bloody conflict, political turmoil, and horrible living conditions. The cost to Iraqis has been the death of hundreds of thousands of Iraqis at best, and billions of dollars have been stolen. The cost to America has been 4,000 dead and $500 billion, according to conservative estimates. Americans began to prepare for demonstrations to protest the war. "Return the soldiers. We don't want another war," are two slogans which summarize the main priority for these people gathered here in Washington.
I came out today because tomorrow marks the 5th year of this war that should have never been waged and never been started. Anyone who was involved should receive a Nobel Prize for rape. I came to say enough is enough.
However, the decision for war did not prevent supporters of the war from bearing the thought that America might lose.
We're there.
We're there. We have got to support our troops and support victory. I'm a Vietnam veteran. Vietnam vets know the taste of defeat. We can't afford to lose in this country.
Some Americans are calling for victory at any cost in agreement with their president, who views that history is now being made in Iraq. However, Bush will not be in the White House when victory is achieved or defeat is recorded. Only his soldiers and a few other dozens from other countries will live through this history.
As Iraqis commemorate the 5th anniversary since the start of the invasion of their country, their reactions were mixed. Some were resentful about the situation, while others were hopeful for a positive change in the future.
The conditions of different Iraqi cities also reflected this mix between neighborhoods, which are relatively stable, and others which are suffering.
Go home, USA!
From Firdaus Square, which witnessed the fall of Saddam Hussein's statue, a few members of the Iraqi Communist Party came out against the invasion and its consequences. For 5 years, Iraqis have been under constant pressure. Sometimes relief comes, but most of the time there are crises in politics, security, the economy, in every field. In the Iraqi streets, passers-by described their trouble. However, many of them still maintain the hope for a dignified life and sovereignty.
5 years of destruction, and it's going from bad to worse. Nothing has improved.
This is a sad and happy anniversary. Happy for the end of the previous regime, and sad for all the suffering that we have endured. We hope that democracy is established.
If the central roads represent the Karada area as an acceptable image of life, other areas like the Fadili in central Baghdad do not appear to reflect this at all. Here, the memories of sufferings and the loss of loved ones stand out.
The older one is in God's company this year. They brought me back his head. Ahmed, they didn't find him. The perpetrators are not humans. Things are deteriorating.
Like the Fadili neighborhood, Sadr city, where there is poverty and a lack of services, appears to be suffering the most. The families remember their sons.
I looked behind at him and he said goodbye. He kissed me and said, "Oh God, oh God."
From far away, this area does not appear to be located in Iraq. However, it does. The difference is that it is located in the Iraqi Kurdistan, where the young men are focused on their physical fitness and some buildings are rising amidst the sound of construction. The concerns of the citizens are different from their brothers in central, southern and western Iraq. As the 5th anniversary of the invasion arrives, a review of past records is filled with sadness, which does not leave any Iraqi without touching him.
مساء الخير من العربية أهلا بكم إلى نشرة جديدة للأخبار.
On the 5th anniversary for the invasion of Iraq, the U.S. President George W. Bush said that his decision of declaring a war in Iraq was the right decision and warned against a fast pullback of his troops from there. Bush also pointed out that Mosul will soon witness fierce fighting against armed groups. He added that during the war, the moments of victory and disaster took turns interchangeably. He admitted that the cost of war, in lives and material, was high, but a great victory has been achieved. According to Bush, Iraq is the place where Al-Qaeda and its leader Osama bin Laden will be defeated.
The surge has done more than turn the situation in Iraq around.
As far as Mosul is concerned, it seems that the political events continue to unfold in a slow pace. Since the Iraqi Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, announced that they are gearing up for the Battle of Mosul, the political maneuvers have not let up in the city. This comes as the government is engaging in talks with tribal leaders and former army officers, with many of them being admitted in the new army. The following report was compiled from Mosul, where the representative of al-Maliki met with tribal leaders.
For the second time in less than a month, Dr. Zuhair Shalabi, the special envoy of the Iraqi Prime Minister Nour al-Maliki, arrived in Mosul to meet with tribal leaders there. Al-Maliki authorized Shalabi, who is originally from Mosul, to hold a conference that includes all tribal leaders and local officials in the city.
I don't know when the situation in Mosul will improve. When will the killings and violence stop in Mosul? When are we going to start the reconstruction efforts in the city and make life easier for the residents? The violence must stop. We can't keep going like this. This is the new Iraq, where we have elections and a political process.
The residents of Mosul expressed mixed opinions about the reasons for the shortcomings witnessed in their city.
The first reason has to do with the local economy. The second reason has to do with the initiative of uprooting the Ba'athists. The third reason has to do with the former members of the Iraqi forces who were dismissed from the service without pay.
Amidst these developments and away from politics, several tribal leaders, university teachers, and local officials held a meeting in the area of Arabiya in western Mosul. The participants agreed that the problem in Mosul has nothing to do with social structure of their city, but it has to do with the political platform. During the meeting in Mosul, the participants announced the formation of an Iraqi social movement.
We formed this Iraqi social movement, which has nothing to do with politics. We need action, not words. We need the Iraqis to rally around their nation.
All of these meetings aim to bring Nineveh into the political process and prepare it to enter the upcoming local elections.
According to George Bush, it was a war aimed at saving Iraqis and making the region and the world a safer place. But 5 years on, Iraq is a country of instability, where rarely a day goes by without bomb blasts, killings, and the loss of innocent lives. In the latest attack, a suspected female suicide bomber blew herself up at a bus terminal in northeast Baghdad. At least 3 people, including a policeman, were killed, and around a dozen people were injured. And that blast coming just ahead of an address from President George Bush on Iraq. He's due to speak in less than an hour and is expected to praise the steps last year to deploy thousands more US troops, a move he says has opened the door to a major strategic victory in the broader war on terror. He'll also talk of achievements, saying the successes we are seeing in Iraq are undeniable. And his speech will claim that the US is helping the people of Iraq establish democracy in the heart of the Middle East. Well, we've been putting those comments to Iraqis on the streets of Baghdad. Here's their response.
These words aim to cover the US faults in Iraq. Bush only wants to justify the US losses. Maybe the public opinion sees the statement as a logical one. I ask the whole world to look at what Bush and others have done to Iraq.
Bush makes these comments because he doesn't value Iraqi blood. His alleged democracy is a lie.
The people of Iraq has given great sacrifices. We have seen what has happened with our own eyes.
The war was worthless. They have only killed the people. I have a lot of friends and neighbors that died.
War has taken us back 60 years. The only things we gained from this war is destruction and killing and kidnapping. We don't have water to drink. President Bush has to experience the real life in Iraq, and then he can say whether the war was good or not.
Well, 5 years ago, nobody expected US forces still to be in Iraq, least of all George Bush. At the time, that George Bush was more concerned with gaining international approval for what he thought would be a short, swift war. Owen Fay has this report.
At the beginning of 2003, George Bush enjoyed overwhelming domestic support, but he also knew he had a problem. His administration was preparing to invade Iraq, but of the 192 countries then recognized by the UN, he could only find 4 others willing to take part.
If war is forced upon us, we will fight in a just cause and by just means, sparing in every way we can the innocent.
Intense diplomatic and economic pressure from the White House wasn't working, and while other nations said they were willing to send forces after the initial invasion, only the United Kingdom, Australia, Denmark and Poland were willing to commit troops from the start. The rest of the world seemed determined to let weapons inspections continue, a policy the White House had grown weary of.
Cheney was highly critical of inspections, and I think on one occasion he said that inspectors are useless at best. And he wanted the US to go ahead with an invasion and not having the complication. He saw that inspections could be complications. Suppose these guys come up and say there is nothing. That would be a complication for the United States.
So the diplomatic compromise concocted by the White House was the coalition of the willing. And on the surface, it sounded impressive. However, certain discrepancies were quickly noted. For example, the European nations included on the list were there because their main contribution to the coalition was simply to let British and American aircraft fly over them. But that was a far greater contribution than most of the rest of the countries, particularly those in Central and South America who couldn't even provide airspace. They were included simply because they'd spoken out against Saddam, which explains the presence in this coalition of devastated war-torn countries like Afghanistan and Eritrea, which obviously had very little to contribute. So why announce this coalition and not just wait until UN Resolution 1441, which called for further inspections, resolved the WMD question once and for all?
We had a mandate from the Security Council. We didn't have a mandate from the United States or from the UK. It was the whole Security Council. We were international civil servants. We were asked to verify with professionalism whether there were any weapons of mass destruction.
So given the scrutiny the list was generating even as the war began, why did the White House announce it at all? The answer, say critics, lies in mathematics. Not only were no Arab countries participating, but of those that were, Australia, Denmark and Poland, they combined to only send 2,500 troops. The British and Americans, by contrast, were sending in 165,000. Therefore, the contributions of the other nations taking part added up to less than 2% of the invasion force. And here, near the CENTCOM headquarters, where the war was mapped and carried out, those numbers weren't helpful. And that led to the heart of George Bush's problem. Unless his administration could think of an alternative, this war could be seen as an Anglo-American invasion of an oil-rich Arab state, especially if things went wrong and an invasion turned into an occupation. And so the Coalition of the Willing was born. Owen Fay, Al Jazeera, Doha.
The civilians are usually the fuel for the killings, destructions, and the countless military operations. After they're fed up with the security and economic situations in their country, many civilians start to look for a better life in a different country, thus becoming the prey of forceful immigration. According to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, 1 in 5 Iraqis are either internally displaced or refugees outside Iraq. The international organization said that nearly 2,700,000 Iraqis, from a total population of 27 million, are displaced refugees. In addition, 2,400,000 refugees, mostly displaced in Syria and Jordan, are living under grave conditions. The organization added that 75% of the refugees don't get government food stamps. In addition, 20% of the refugees don't have access to clean drinking water, and 33% don't have access to medicine. Meanwhile, Egypt was the destination for many rich Iraqis and merchants. Nearly 150,000 Iraqi refugees are currently living in Egypt, with the majority living in the 6 October city. The living conditions of Iraqi refugees in Egypt are much better than those living in other Arab countries. In Egypt, Iraqi refugees opened businesses and bought land and residential properties. A brief look at their lives in Egypt is highlighted in the following report by Faiza Alak.
المسقوف والصمون ونغمة بغداد.
Iraqi dishes of masgouf and samoon and the tone of Baghdad are evident here in Egypt. Amidst their painful memories and the longing for their homeland, the Iraqi refugees were embraced by their new host country, Egypt. In the 6th of October city, dozens of displaced Iraqi families who escaped from the hell of war settled in this residential neighborhood. Many of the refugees engaged in trading activities, as other job opportunities are not easy to find.
Iraqi refugees in the 6 October city established businesses. Many of the bakers sell samoon and Iraqi bread. In addition, some seafood restaurants cater Iraqi masqouf.
Among themselves, the refugees know each other's religious sect or political affiliation. However, outside their inner circle, they are working together to broaden their horizon and help one another, especially since alienation has become their common denominator.
The withdrawal of the Americans from Iraq is more important for me than any monetary gain.
For the Iraqi refugees in Egypt, living here is a temporary arrangement, even if it was prolonged under the given circumstance. Security is what the people of the land of two rivers living in diaspora are pleading for, realizing that once security is restored, everything else is possible.
A number of students in Baghdad's University in Babel complex demanded that their university provide them with more services so the education process is not interrupted.
Meanwhile, the language department at Baghdad University, in cooperation with the Iranian embassy, opened a new division to teach Farsi.
If education is enlightenment and cleanliness is a virtue, then why can't the two meet at Baghdad University? Students have walked out from their classes to protest the lack of services at the university. They announced that they will not return to their classrooms. The education process is interrupted by many things at Babel Complex. The power is constantly being cut off, the water is not clean enough for drinking, and the university buildings are deteriorating. In addition, the students complained about the slow construction in some areas of the university. Students also protested the presence of the occupation forces at the university campus.
The construction always takes place during school periods. We had a holiday for 15 days. Why didn't they complete the construction then?
We see the situation at the university. This is a respectable university. Baghdad University is internationally recognized. It should be clean.
The American forces always come to the university. This is an educational campus. They should not come here. We demand that the American forces stop intervening in our lives. This is not right. We are students.
A number of students refused to join the strike. They believe that such strikes are not useful because the demands will not be fulfilled. They stress the need to continue the education process despite the lack of services.
We came here to learn. I do not think that the strike is going to bring us anything. In the past we held the strikes, but nothing happened.
Thank God this year was good. We only want the services to improve so we can feel better psychologically.
While the student strike was taking place at Babel Complex, the Languages Department inaugurated a new division for teaching Farsi. The division was built in cooperation with the Iranian embassy. The Iranian ambassador Hassan Khatami Kumi attended the celebration.
There must be cultural cooperation between countries. The language department deals with different languages, European and Eastern. Some countries are not cooperating enough. We hope that this will change in the future.
University professors have undermined the student strike because, according to the president of Baghdad University, most of the students' demands are about to be met. Amjad Talia, Al-Iraqiya, Baghdad.
Jerusalem Police Commander Aharon Franco today expressed harsh criticism for the lack of action by the first two police officers arriving at the Merkaz Harav Yeshiva while the massacre was underway. The Knesset Interior Committee also discussed the policies, the police handling of the Jabal Mukaber riot. IBA's Dennis Zinn has that story.
In situations of an ongoing terror attack, a policeman is expected to strive for engagement with the intent of killing the terrorist. This according to Jerusalem Police Chief Ilan Franco, who severely criticized the patrolman who arrived at the Merkaz Harav Yeshiva minutes after the incident was reported, but failed to enter the compound until the terrorist was killed 15 minutes later. Franco was addressing the Knesset Interior Committee during a hearing on the performance of the police force during the March the 6th terror attack at the yeshiva, in which 8 students were killed. He said that the officers claimed that he did not take action because he was afraid of shooting an innocent person was not acceptable. Nevertheless, Franco said at present he does not plan to take any disciplinary action against the man. Franco praised the 2 detectives who arrived minutes after the first patrolman and did open fire, even though they did not have a direct line of sight of the gunman. He said they prevented further killing of students by distracting the terrorist from his unopposed shooting spree. The terrorist was eventually neutralized and killed by a student who shot him with his handgun and by off-duty IDF officer Captain David Shapiro, who fired a volley from his Army-issue automatic rifle. Franco was criticized by several committee members over events during the aftermath of the yeshiva killings. He was asked why the police did not act sooner to remove the Hamas and Hezbollah flags at the terrorists' family's mourning tent, and why riots were allowed to erupt outside the terrorists' family's home in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Jabal Mukaber. Regarding the disturbances by right-wing protesters, Franco said his force was taken by surprise by the ferocity of the young demonstrators. He said the Jerusalem police will not allow such breaches of public order to be repeated. Dennis Zin, IBA News.
In a scene
that may help awaken the Arab and Muslim sleepy subconscious, the families of martyred children who were killed in cold blood by the Zionist occupation visited their children's classrooms in the Jabalia elementary school.
May God give me patience and willpower.
Amidst tears and sorrow, the mothers of martyred children visited their children's classrooms in the Jabalia Elementary School. The martyrs Omar, Ali, Muhammad, and Arduna, who were exterminated by the Zionist occupation, left empty seats in their former school in Jabalia. Today, the school received their bereaved mothers.
I came here because I wanted to sit in my son's seat. I can't imagine that my son is no longer a student of this class. I've always come and looked for him. After today, I will not find him. May God redeem me from the loss of my child, whose life was taken away by the Jews.
It was one of the most difficult moments facing the mother of martyred Omar Darduna, who embraced her son's empty seat and started kissing it as she was overwhelmed with emotions.
I came here to remember my son. I wanted to sit in his seat and learn as he did. I wanted to see how he used to study along with his classmates. They broke our hearts by taking away the lives of our children. May God break their hearts, just like they broke ours.
Meanwhile, the friends and classmates of the martyred children are trying to cope with their losses, vowing to continue moving forward on the road ahead.
Two of my friends and neighbors, Iyad and Jacqueline Abu Shibak, were martyred. Those were the 3 most difficult days of my life.
I felt something in my heart that I never felt before. It's a weird feeling that I can't explain.
Meanwhile, the school administration confirmed that their psychological and counseling department has set aside special days for the children to receive counseling and social support.
From the very first day, we worked on setting aside days for the children to receive help. In conjunction with the Department of Education and the Ministry, we appointed counselors and social workers to provide the students with the psychological and social support they will need. The counselors are also helping the children cope with any suppressed feelings that they may have.
A cloud of sorrow continues to persist over the lives of these mothers whose children are no longer able to attend school. This news comes after the missiles of hatred have cut their lives short. Meanwhile, the mothers of martyred children are turning to the children of tomorrow to help ease their pain caused by the departure of their own children. It's true that Omar, Ali, Muhammad, and Arduna have left their school to attend the high school of heaven. However, their weapon of learning continues to defy the enemy, especially when many children are still on the same path.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news. with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.